The Dune watch, Dune watch. Everybody's talking about the Dune watch. So we went and bought the Dune watch. Let's dive into Addiesdive. Sorry for the cheap Hyundai. Our first episode on Chinese watches was through the Seagull 1963. So this is the second part of that series we wanted to do. And that is really just to talk about what it means to be made in China when it comes to watches. It's no surprise, ever since COVID, the watch industry in the market has gone through the roof because we're all bored, stuck at home, waiting for something to come along for us to spend and splurge our money on. And one of the most lucrative industries was the watch market, and we all spent a lot of money on watches. But it also spotlighted the very reality of what it means to be a watchmaker, where it's made, and the quality of watches. We all learned what Rolex is, we all understood what Tudor is, but how many of us actually understand that when we wear a Swiss watch, most of that Swiss watch, depending on the brand, is actually made in Asia, or namely China. Today, a lot of watch factories in China have actually come out of their shell after years of making parts for non-Chinese watch brands, and they've started making their own watches. A lot of channels have been talking this watch up, and purely because of the dial, the effect that is its dune effect, like the sand dunes. And with the movie Dune 2 recently released, and a cracker movie, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. This sort of hit the sweet spot. The watch brands that we normally associate with great finishes on dials are Grand Seiko, let's face it. They're the king when it comes to tying poetically a scene into a dial.
Alive in time. Grand Seiko.
Why Addiesdive got so hyped up recently is because they created this dune shape, or the dune effect, on their watches that no one else have yet made. And the finishing product has been nothing short of extraordinary, especially where you consider the price you pay for this watch. I've actually taken the liberties of even reaching out to Addiesdive and wanting to dig a little bit deeper. So I asked them a whole series of questions. And one of the questions is, why is the brand called Addiesdive? And they explained to me that originally it was called Addies watches. And then later, because of their soiree into the dive watches and the diving watches, they want to get into the diving watches, they just simply bolt on the dive into Addiesdive. The exact responses to that email exchange you will see, we'll post it there for you. And you can see that I've asked them a whole heap of other questions. But the central point of my questioning, understanding more about the price points they're pricing at, this particular watch was about 70 Australian dollars, free shipping by the way, and this was purchased on AliExpress. I typed in Addiesdive Dune watch. There was many listings on AliExpress, and they all had a different price point, and they all had a different company selling this particular watch. So I was like, oh, talk about the pitfalls of buying a Chinese watch when the mostly Chinese watch industry has been known as a replica industry. So I reached out to Addiesdive and I said, these are the watch companies that's selling your watches, you know. Strangely enough, they came back and said, you know, they are actual wholesalers of their watch. So it is quite clear that these watches are mass produced. And due to its popularity, I have seen prices on AliExpress go up quite significantly. There are even some websites in some stores within AliExpress selling these watches for hundreds of dollars. Do not spend more than $100 on this watch. Oh, by the way, just to cover off logistics, this watch arrived, I think was 3 weeks from my initial purchase, which is quite fast, for $70 because free shipping. It came in this neat little, cute little hard case. That would cost you at least $10, $15, $20 to purchase if you're just buying the case itself. But it came with this watch, $70. I can't stress enough, $70 watch. Straight out of the box, this watch reminded me of a couple of watches I own. There is this Explorer feel to it, beautiful 36mm, which is my sweet spot for watches. It's got this beautiful Rolex oyster case sort of esque type of feel on the sides with this polished curved sides. Bracelet is very reminiscent of Rolex bracelets. The clasp, I was expecting that to be of a cheaper variety, but no, it's not. It's in fact a solid, decent clasp. Seiko, if you're listening, you can learn a few things or two because Seiko clasps are shockers. And what I love about this clasp is that my biggest criticism of the Christopher Ward 36mm was that the clasp felt it was just off the shelf. So they applied that clasp to all their watches, regardless of size. And naturally that clasp was massive in proportion to the C63 36mm watch. But you look at this $70 watch. Perfect size proportion to the actual watch face. This sort of asks the question and go, well, how is it a Chinese watch factory making a watch with, to the naked eye, flawless finishing when you pay $1,500 for a Christopher Ward and they can't have the finesse of having the clasp in proportion to the watch face? It's a quartz movement, $70. What did you expect? But it is a Japanese quartz made by Seiko. The manufacturers kindly told me what it was. And I looked up online. That watch movement, I think it's the VH1 or something, depending on which website you buy, it's a $20 to $30 watch movement. Now, if they bought that in bulk, maybe that's reduced to maybe $10, $12, $15. But it's still a decent quartz movement. The markings on this watch, it's paying homage or trying to replicate what Grand Seiko is doing. Now, the boys are gonna do some macro shots on the actual markers, and I'll give the boys my Grand Seiko to compare the actual finishing through those macro shots so you can see how close they got. But again, I can't stress this enough. The Dune watch by Addiesdive, $70. And we're going to macro shot comparison this damn watch to a Grand Seiko, which will be $15,000. The Dune effect, they've knocked it out of the ballpark. It's prominent. Every time I look at it, it reminds me of the sand dunes. I remember when I was in Abu Dhabi having this 4-wheel drive tour. It's exactly reminiscent of that. It makes me want to be a Fremen, right? The laser etching, well, it's not laser etching. I think it's actually even sandblasted in. It's again flawless. Does the bracelet feel a bit tinny and feel a bit light and a bit sort of sharp onto the feel? Yes. It doesn't have the finesse of a Rolex Explorer, but a Rolex Explorer is a $10,000 watch these days. This is a $70 watch. We should do a count of how many times I've said $70. 70 Australian dollars. $70. $70. $70 watch. $70. $70 watch. $70. $70. $70. $70 watch.
Watch logistics. Watch logistics.
How much Swiss made is in your Swiss made watch? I'm pretty confident Rolex, being the juggernaut company it is, a good proportion of their watch will be made in exactly where they say it's made. But what about the microbands? How much of it is made in Switzerland? Especially when the wording on it is so loose, right? The value only has to be over 60% incurred in Switzerland for it to be made in Switzerland. I can ship that to Europe and get a watchmaker to look at it Don't even touch it, just look at it. Can I then legitimately say this is a Swiss-made watch? Yes, you can. That's the scary part. This is a good example of how cheap things are in China. And it's not hard to cross that threshold of 60%. Chinese watchmakers out there, if you're watching this, continue to do what you do because clearly you guys have the skill sets and the machineries. The only advice to you is cut down your catalog. You know, you go to Seagull, there is like so many different varieties of watches.
Don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
Addiesdive, making watches of this quality for $70 can already make a name for themselves. How long do you think it's going to take before they elevate their game? And it's going to be like a steam train, and it's going to rolling very fast. So all Swiss makers, or leading Swiss watchmakers, be warned. So that's my second part to this, what it means to be made in China. Leave us your comment, leave us your thoughts on this subject matter.